Welcome to Science Engaged, where we explore why and how scientists partner with diverse communities.
And you start wanting to put resources into it and justify putting resources into it, it's worth thinking about, well, why do I want to build awareness? What is it? If I corrected misinformation or raised awareness or built this relationship, what do I think would be different in the world?
I'm your host, Kristel Tjandra, and today I'm joined by our guest, Dr. John Besley, whose work focuses on public opinion about science and scientists' opinion about the public. He's a co-author of the book Strategic Science Communication, a guide to setting the right objectives for more effective public engagement. And he also has a new book that just came out called Science Communication for Scientists. Welcome, John.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yes, Science Communication for Scientists. That's the new one we worded with Laura Lindenfeld at Stony Brook, as well as myself and Xiao Zhang and Anthony Dudo and Todd Newman. So this one's more of a group effort. That first one was Anthony and I, and then we have a cohort of authors for this new book.
That's exciting. So today we'll discuss some of the factors that motivate people to take part in science projects and think about what scientists can do to increase that participation. We know that involving the public in research projects, often called citizen science or participatory science, has many benefits for the economy and for the advancement of science itself. But a survey from the Pew Research Center in 2020 found that only 1 in 10 U.S. population participates in citizen science projects. So, John, knowing these statistics, when we consider why people choose to participate or not to participate in a science projects, what are some of the factors that are in play?
Yeah, I mean, 1 in 10 seems like a pretty good number to me. I mean, everybody's busy, right? We all have things to do. We have kids to take care of. We have family members to to help out. We have friends that we need to maintain relationships with, and so the idea that 1 in 10 Americans is taking part in some sort of science activity is great. Of course, we always want it's great when Americans or when anyone around the world gets involved in science in some sort of way, but in general, people take part in things because when they think it's worthwhile, when they think that it's something that people like them do, and when they think they're able to, when they think which means like they have the skills to do it, or they have the time and the resources to do it. Of course, they also have to believe that the people they're going to interact with when they do those activities are people they want to be around, which is to say they're trustworthy. It means like they're caring and honest and competent, and all those things together. I mean, that's true for why people do take part in a citizen science event. And that's true for why people really do anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. How does science communication influence people's participation or behavior in this case?
So for me, one of the fun things when I think about science communication, the way I've sort of changed how I think about it a little bit over the last bunch of years. I used to think more about like, oh, it's communicating science, but now I think about it as communication in the context of science. And so when I think about something like a citizen science activity, if I'm a researcher and I'd love to get some people involved, it's science communication for science communication in a way, but it's like, yeah, I have to think about like, okay, I want people to be involved. What can I say and do that makes it more likely that people are going to be involved? Uh, Science, that sort of participation is just another type of behavior. It's a great behavior for lots of reasons, but it is, same thing. If I want somebody to come to a science event, right? Maybe it's not a full
Right.
science thing. Maybe it's just coming to an event. Same sort of things. They got to believe that coming to that event is going to be worthwhile. They got to believe that that event they can get to that event and that they can enjoy the event and that the people they're going to meet are people they want to be around, and all those things, it all comes back to the same sort of principles.
Yeah, you mentioned about trust before. And when we talk about scientists engaging, interacting, or partnering with the public, this word trust often comes up. Some of our listeners might wonder, how do we build trust? What does it mean for scientists to build trust with the community they want to reach?
Yeah, and that's so I think that so the key thing that when I think about this is I try to think about so really two concepts, right? We have the behavior of trust, and then we have the beliefs that make it more likely that people will do the behavior, right? And so for trust as a behavior in the context of science can be lots of things, right? So if I give up my time to go to your civic science event, or if I give up my time to go to your public lecture, or if I give up my time to go to your museum, I'm trusting that I'm going to get a positive experience, right? I'm the behavior, like I'm putting in my time, my resources. I'm making myself essentially vulnerable in the language we use. I'm making myself vulnerable to you in some sort of way.
Hmm.
And then it's again, what makes it more likely that I'm going to be willing to make myself to take your advice, to go to your event.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have the things that are more typical, which is like it's got to be worthwhile going to the event. But when it comes to trustworthiness, we typically mean you got to believe that the people that you're going to interact with at the event, or maybe the people you're going to take advice from, you have to believe they have some expertise. They have some sort of useful knowledge that they might be able to share with you. But then you also got to believe that they care about people like you. We use the language, sometimes it's called benevolence or goodwill, depending on the theory of trust you're building on. But functionally, it's like you have to believe that those people care about your needs and you as a person. And then the third sort of big, or at least another sort of characteristics, is you have to believe those people. It's helpful if you believe those people are honest, have integrity. That's particularly important often in some science contexts. We can extend that out into some other beliefs that might matter. You got to believe that it would be helpful probably if you believe that the people you're going to meet or the scientists are willing to listen, which is to say they're open, they're eager, not even just willing to listen, they're eager to listen, and that they're eager to share the things that they know, but also eager to hear what the insights you might have and use them and how they're thinking. And the last thing is it's nice to know that it's a little less clear but where it all fits, but it's nice to know that maybe they share some things with you, some things around values, some shared identities, maybe whatever it is. But it's often nice to know if, okay, these people aren't so different than me. And all of those things, the nice thing about all of those things, right? You can do things if you're promoting an event, if you're hosting event, you can do lots of things that help people recognize, like, okay, yeah, so this person has some expertise. Here's what this person cares about. Here's why. Here's how I know that they have some integrity. Here's some evidence here that they're not just going to be talking at me, but they're eager to listen and hear the kinds of things I have to say. And it turns out they're also, we share some things. We share some values. We care about some of the same things. Those are all things we can communicate, and they're all theoretically and practically things that build that trust, that increase the likelihood that people are going to trust you, which is to say,
Yeah. You mentioned about, one of the example being, when you're promoting an event. Can you give me some examples of, what has kind of worked in terms of people's maybe the way they market their events or the way they tell people about themselves? Yeah.
Yeah, so this tricky is we don't have a ton of experience. It's a thing I've always wanted to do more experiments on. And like, how can I just make posters to see what conceptually though? I mean, the things that make a poster, what I want to make sure that I do is you want to make sure. So, and I'm actually going to go beyond trust here. I'm going to think about just all the things we need to think about. All right, so I'm trying to decide whether I want to go to the event. So I need to know enough information so that I can make a decision about, okay, this is going to be useful for me. It's going to be enjoyable and satisfying. So I got to make sure there's some content on there that makes it more likely that I believe that. I got to maybe know who it's for, like which is to say, it sounds interesting, but who's it for? Like, so to say, social norms, like what kind of people are going to be there? Are they going to be? And so that would be nice to know. It'd be nice to know a little bit about how feasible is it to go? Does that cost something? Is there going to be parking? Is there going to be childcare? Is there going to be food? Like it's right at dinner. So you need to tell people there's going to be food. And then, you want information that help, like, well, who are these people? Again, I go back to the trustworthiness stuff. Are these people that I can trust to give up an evening of my time, that I'm gonna have an experience where I feel respected and I learn something, and that from some expertise. And so all those things, and again, it's anything that you're essentially trying to reduce the uncertainty of the person of like, okay, if I make this choice, it's going to turn out well for me in terms of both, like in terms of being useful, but also in terms of being enjoyable and in terms of like the people I'm going to be around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, knowing these principles, what are some of the ways scientists can learn about how people are perceiving them?
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer that like, so you talked about Pew as you were starting out, and so and I was involved in for a bunch of years working with the National Science Board on some survey work that they used to do every couple of years. But it's unfortunate that the scientific community doesn't typically have a ton of like really empirical, like hard data on what people actually think about scientists and science. It would be great if we could find ways to get that. In practice, though, part of it is thinking, is being a little bit reflexive, being thoughtful. Especially over time, you can start getting a sense of like, okay, this is a community I want to have a relationship with. This is a community I might want to, build some trust with. What do I know about what they think? Do I know, so if my topic is, for my work, right? So I'm interested in helping science science communicators become more effective. And so over time, one of the things that I'm trying to learn is like, well, what do they think of are the benefits of different approaches to science communication? What do they think is normal for science communicators? And so I'm just, what do they think is feasible? And so again, it's these same concepts again, but now I'm not thinking about it as what can I share as information, but I'm thinking about, well, what do I know about how they're thinking? That can help me make choices going forward. But they're the same concepts. I'm trying to understand. It's like I want to know what they, or I want to understand what they understand, or it's that kind of same concepts though. We're trying to figure out why they make the choices they make, and the nice thing about theory is that it can help us think about some of those things in sort of systematic ways.
Right. Yeah. So through your research, what have you seen as the major hurdles in terms of communicating science to motivate people's behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, in science communication, the thing that we sort of try to address through our books and our work is trying to get people to think a little more deeply about why they're communicating. A lot of people, when you first get into doing science communication, it's really easy to think into like, well, I want to raise awareness, or I want to correct misinformation. I want to tell stories, and I want to build relationships. And I think when you start getting into it, you start wanting to put resources into it and justify putting resources into it. It's worth thinking about, well, why do I want to build awareness? What is it? If I corrected misinformation or raised awareness or built this relationship, what do I think would be different in the world? And once you can figure out, which we would talk about here, and not just thinking about, I'm going to communicate with the public, but it's like, who do I want to have who specifically do I want to have a relationship with? Who do I specifically want to share information with, or hear from when I'm making decisions? And so really being really specific about what we could say audience specific behavioral goal, which sounds and so we can think about it as audience specific behavioral context, if that makes it sound nicer, but it's like knowing that, okay, no, I'm producing research on how to communicate effectively. And I would like science communicators to consider that evidence when they make decisions about how to communicate, right? And so that consider the evidence around effective communication when they communicate, that's what I want people to do. And also, of course, I'm also always trying to figure out how can I do better research. And so it's the two-way thing for me comes like, I'm trying to change my behavior, be a better communicator, better researcher. But yeah, I'm trying to share ideas about that I think might help other people be a better communicator. So I work with astronomers, and you go in and their initial goals are, well, we want people to experience the awe and wonder of astronomy, which is cool. It's a great place to start. But it is worth saying, well, if you were successful in getting people to get that sense of awe and wonder, what do you think would happen?
Right.
Like, well, and so you can sort of have that conversation. And one of the things you get to is, well, they want, I think kids might consider a STEM career if they experience that awe and wonder. And then we can say, okay, well, your goal isn't awe and wonder. Your goal, your audience specific behavioral context, behavioral goal is really about, you want kids to consider a STEM career. Now, awe and wonder might be one piece of that, but if you're trying to get a kid to consider a STEM career, they also need to believe that pursuing a STEM career is worthwhile and normal and feasible, and that the people they're going to be around are trustworthy. And so we also need to make sure that we can use that awe and wonder, and we can explore whether awe and wonder is a really good sort of thing to share, but we wouldn't want to just do awe and wonder. We wouldn't want to sort of, right? We want to think, okay, but in addition to doing awe and wonder, what can we say about, is there a way we can talk about how STEM careers are really satisfying, and that the people you're going to be around are really interesting, and that there's other things we can communicate before awe and wonder. All that to say, people get stuck often start their communication path with, I have a solution, awe and wonder. I have a solution, correct information. I have a solution. I'm going to do a podcast, and they don't push themselves, but I don't need a podcast.
Right.
What I hope's going to happen. So,
yeah, it sounds to me that the common pitfalls is that people don't peel deeper into the why of why science communication. Why do we want people to participate? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. My colleague Anthony often talks about pull back that onion, right? Like, why are we doing this? And getting to a point where oh yeah, we can, and I can now justify putting my time to this because well, here's the impact I'm hoping to have. And of course you have to do that in there's a big difference. I think there's a big difference between saying my goal is to make people vaccinate their kids, right? That's really prescriptive versus I'd love for people to consider the science when they make decisions about whether to vaccinate their kids. It's the same sort of thing, but it's just a different sort of mindset of I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm sharing some information in the context, the behavioral context of you making a decision about vaccination. Here's some stuff you might consider knowing. And it's not, here's how vaccines work. It's, maybe it's, here's the benefits of vaccines, and here's some of the risks of getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated. And here's what other people are doing when it comes to vaccination. And here's what you need to do if you wanted to get vaccinated, and it's not that hard. And here are the people who are working hard on all the vaccinations and why you can trust them, that you can share information, figure out knowing that the behavioral context is like, I want people to consider the science around vaccination. I can now thinking more broadly about, well, what kinds of things might I share that isn't just, here's what a spike protein looks like.
Right. Yeah, that's a really helpful framework to think about. So can you offer some tips for scientists who want to design a science project that involves the public? How do we cultivate that right mindset?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is, so one of the things, another thing that we see sort of mistake people make maybe in science is thinking it's like DIY. Everybody go do it yourself. Versus the first thing I would say is, if you think there's a thing that you're interested in, see if there's other people around you who share that interest. Communication is going to be a lot more effective. Like the communication we're interested in is like the sustained, long-term building, sharing ideas and information and receiving ideas and information. It's a long-term process. And it's really hard to do that as an individual. It's hard to find the resources. It's hard to find the time. I mean, time is a resource. But, and so the first thing is, see if there's other people around you who share your priorities. And part of that might be a communication expert, somebody who has a little more experience in the space and can help you with that sort of strategic process. All that being, then from there, it really is, I think, so on one hand, there's absolutely dive in, do stuff. It can be fun and you can build some skills. Try to make sure that you're giving people, fundamentally, if you're giving people a positive experience with science, that's not a bad thing. But as you get more into it, they're pushing yourself to think through, like, okay, well, I'm a scientist. Let's think scientifically about what I'm doing here. Let's which includes the team science, which includes let's think through each step and think about how we can iterate and improve and know where we're going. And that sort of systematic thinking that's so natural to science, we can bring some of that over into how we communicate in the context of science.
Right. Yeah. And of course, some of the best projects are actually projects that run for multiple times, or not just a once-off project. And so one of the questions that I have is, once we've designed a project, what are some practical ways to make sure that we can evaluate or strategically learn from it and create future projects that are even more effective?
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes I feel like a broken record, but like, so if you've been really careful about setting it up, so like if you say, I want kids to choose a STEM career as your goal, that's really tricky, right? Like that's a really long-term goal. You're not gonna, and now we can break that goal down into something like, I want kids to take a AP STEM course in high school, or I want kids to sign up for this STEM camp, or I want kids to go to this museum. So we can make like more smaller, sort of shorter term goals, and maybe we can start to measure those. But if you just think about like, okay, if I'm having a science event, science talk, festival event, and I've said that, okay, I want people to feel like science is enjoyable and useful, and I want them to feel like it's something that they're able to do, and it's something, and that the people who are involved in science are trustworthy, I can then do an evaluation that's like, hey, you just experienced a science event. Did you find it useful? Did you find it interesting? I can do an evaluation like, hey, the people you interacted with, to what degree did they seem like they cared about people like you? To what degree do they seem open and willing to listen to people like you? To what degree did they seem like they're people with deep integrity? To what degree did they seem like they have some expertise? We can evaluate all those things that we think cognitive and affective objectives, really with that first book that Strategic Science Communication was about. Those are all things that you can design into your communication, and then there are also things that you can evaluate against in the shorter term. Especially those trustworthiness ones are great things for this. So many evaluations we've looked at are like, how satisfied were you with the event?
Right.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't really tell you what to fix. If you want to know is like, was the speaker interesting? Did the speaker seem to care about you? Was the speaker seem to have expertise? Because now we can Did you learn something useful? I mean, no, we got to think about like, well, don't just get the overall evaluation, get their specific beliefs about how they experienced it, and thinking about, well, if I got a certain answer, would it help me make a future decision?
Right. Yeah. If you can sum up some of the key takeaways for scientists who want to increase the public's participation in research, what would that be?
One is give them a good reason to do it, right? So people do things because they think it's going to be beneficial. And it's worth thinking that beneficial doesn't always mean useful. That's one type of beneficial. We really think of it, there's also, it's going to be enjoyable, right? That's going to be kind of good, and which is fun. We can sometimes do that. Probably even more though is this idea of satisfaction, eudaimonic benefit, which sounds silly, but this idea that like we don't just do things because we don't go for a jog because it's fun to go for a jog, right? We go for a jog because it feels good, right? It feels good to have done it. It feels good to have read a hard book and to work through a thing. And so the degree to which we can give people these sort of satisfying experiences, which all sort of fits into that benefit space. And then we just, things like we want people to do stuff. If we go to that self-efficacy idea, make sure they know that they can do it, right? Like, oh, I can't do that. You don't want somebody saying, I can't do that, I'll never be able to help. No, like, they have to believe that they can do it. And that can be about changing the activity to make it easier, or it can be about making sure we're going to provide the training, or it can be about like communicating like, no, this isn't that difficult. You can do this. People like you do this, which is also the other one, the middle one, right? Like you can communicate that, yeah, there's a lot. This is an event that lots of people like you come to, and so we can communicate those things. But fundamentally, there's like, make sure people believe it's going to be satisfying and possible.
Right.
It's feasible. That's always going to get people there. And then that stuff around who's going to be there, and of course, like the degree to which you can say like the people who are going to be there are people you want to be around is not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's very helpful to think about. Thank you so much for your insights, John. Before we end our conversation, can you tell us more about what your recent book is about and how can people follow your work?
Yeah. So the recent book, it just came out. It's five of us. Where our first book was really about really focused on the different objectives that you can pursue through communication once you figure out your goals. This new book is a lot. It's more of a traditional, it's not semi-traditional textbook. And so it starts out with some of that strategy stuff, but then it really gets into each chapter. Most of the chapters after about chapter 3 are chapters about, how to take these ideas into writing, how to take these ideas into, creating audiovisual materials or organizing an event. Another fun thing about it is we had some really generous foundations support some of the work. The Kavli Foundation, the Rita Allen Foundation, the Brinson Foundation. And so it's actually available online, open access. It's through Routledge, but if you go to the Routledge page, there's a link there to the book, and it's open access, which we really appreciate. And we're in the process of building out some sort of additional materials that'll support the book. And then finding me is really easy. I'm on LinkedIn. We have lots of fun science communication conversations on LinkedIn. And just, I'm a professor. I'm easy to find. I'm always eager to hear, people's sense of what the kind of research they need, the kinds of research that would be helpful, the different ways we could communicate about that research that would be more helpful. We're really eager to make sure that we're doing research that's interesting and useful.
Great. I'll be sure to check out that new book. And thank you again for being in the show.
I'm happy to be here. I really appreciate the time. And yeah, I look forward to chatting with everyone.
This episode is made possible by support from Schmidt Sciences and the UC Santa Cruz Science Communication Catalyst Grant. Thanks for listening.